Rhoda Jackie Joseph, also known as Ruthie, of Lassages St. David, who resided in Tortola, a former teacher of the St. David's RC School and the BVI's Seventh-day Adventist School, passed away on Sunday, November 6, 2022, at the age of 34. Left to cherish her memories are her mother Bernadette Joseph, siblings Dean Augustine, Denise Green, Rhonda Joseph, Rosalind Francis, Rowan Antoine, Rachel Joseph, Raquel Fraser, and Bernard Joseph. Brothers-in-law Leonard Francis, Harrian Antoine, and Kenneth Fraser. Sister-in-law Hannah Joseph. Nieces and nephews Dexter, Debbie Ann, and Desiree Green. Kelly and Keisha Cuffey. Giovanni and Giovanna Antoine. Rashad and Raynell Francis. Kiona and Rashida Joseph. Nathan and Azaliah Fraser. Rayshonte Joseph and Aurora Joseph. Aunts Rosa Mitchell, Alexandrina Paul, Agnes Carter, and Gloria Smart. Uncles Joseph and Sylvester Hippolyte. Other relatives and friends including Rose Bagman and Louisa Thomas, Sharon Phillip and family, Elsa Joseph and family, Anne-Marie Sylvester and family, Terry Charles and family, Unita Edwards and family, the Hippolyte family, the Etienne family of Malty, the Mitchell family of Petite Esperance, Nola and Nolan Bain, the 1999 graduating class of the Corinth Government School, the 2004 graduating class of the St. David's Catholic Secondary School, the 2010 graduating class of the T.A. Marichaud Community College Teacher Education Department, the 2013 graduating class of the University of the Southern Caribbean, the 2021 graduating class of the St. George's University, the principal, staff and students of the St. David's RC, the principal, staff and students of the BVI Seventh-day Adventist School, the pastors, elders and members of the North Caribbean Conference, and the pastors, elders and members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Corinth St. David. The funeral of the late Rhoda Jackie Joseph, also known as Ruthie, of Lassages St. David, who resided in Tortola, will take place on Monday, November 28th at 12 noon. Funeral service will be held at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Corinth, and interment will be at the St. David Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Kinder George of Trinidad, who resided at Belmont St. George, died on Friday 28th October 2022 at the age of 37. Left to mourn her parents Yvonne John and Michael George. Siblings Kizzy Hostin, Keisha George, Darren Hostin, Lydia Nayak, Sherwin George and Sean George. Children Brianna Clark, Jaheim Jordan and Nehemiah Brown. Cousins Kimberly Hilaire, Pamela Richards Bartholomew, Yolanda John, Ronell Hostin and Lanisha Sherman. Aunts Gloria John, Dean Pear, Louina George, Laurel Paul and Gemma Hostin. Uncle Henry Isaac. Brothers-in-law Larry Sylvester and Richard Plaza. Other relatives and friends including Zoya Cobb, Karuna Alfred, and Anique Williams. The funeral service of the late Kinder George of Trinidad, who resided at Belmont St. George, will take place on Tuesday 29th November at 1:30 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Bailey's Funeral Home Chapel, and interment will be at the Center Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Everett Cutane of Cherry Hill St. George, a retired laundry superintendent at the government's laundry Darbo St. George, a member of the Cathedral Men in the Footsteps of Christ, passed away on Wednesday 26 October 2022 at the age of 88. Left to cherish his memories are his beloved wife Mavis Cutane, children Cyril, Patricia, Alicia and Carol, stepdaughter Sherma, grandchildren Al, Alion and Shem, great-grandson Avia, other relatives and friends including Albert Lewis, Marilyn St. John, Claudette Henry, Frankie, Patricia Braffett, Kieran Braffett, Selwyn Maxwell, the Cutane family of Belmont St. George, John Wells, Pastor Davis John and his wife, Mrs. Yvette John, and neighbours of Cherry Hill and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Everett Cutane of Cherry Hill St. George will take place on Tuesday, November 29th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, Church Street, St. George's, and interment will be at the St. George's Centre Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Michelle Florence Slinger of Montague St. George passed away on Tuesday, 8 November, at the age of 55. She was the sister of Carl Henry, Aidan Dunbar, Ronnie and Cheryl Ann Slinger, and Barry Findlay, aunt of Natalie Modeste, Calvin and Curtis Henry, Veron, Sean, Siobhan, Ashley, Rian, and Keela Slinger, Sean L. Cyrus, and Sherry and Sharina Jones, Ephraim Atia Goodin, Kyron Mudu, Shem and Imran Buckmeyer, sister-in-law of Joycelyn Henry, Joan, Carol, and Winifred Slinger. Many cousins, other relatives and friends including Claudette Pitt, Joanna Tama, Earl Thomas, Brenda Fletcher, Betty Bowler, Faye Roberts, and Attie Dubry, Terry and Jackie Williamson and family, Maureen Alexander and family, the Lendo family and Sampson family, Susan Charles and family, Sally and Slinger, friends and neighbors of Creighton, Bathway, Montague, and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Michelle Florence Slinger of Montague St. George will take place on Tuesday, 29th November at 1 p.m. The funeral service will be held at the Berean Bible Church, Upper Lucas Street, St. George, and entombment at the Wilberforce Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Stephen Giddens, also known as Victor Modeste of Ruquin St. David, passed away on Friday, 11th November 2022, at the age of 78. He was the father of Derek, Janelle, Melissa in Grenada, Melinda in Canada, Vanessa and Devon in Trinidad, grandfather of Shakira Giddens, Javon, Josh and Javel Bartholomew, Rishon Francis, Shamar and Shermia Moraine, Nishon Paul, Trevin Giddens in Canada, and Malik Giddens in Trinidad, brother of Cecil Giddens, Dennis Thomas Joseph and Carol Modeste, Sharon Regis in Grenada, and Desmond McIntosh Giddens in Trinidad, father-in-law of Patricia Charles, nephew of Christine Modeste, cousin of Anthony Modeste. Many nieces, nephews, other relatives and friends including Kirk Baker and family, Radisson George, the Modeste, Gittens, Christopher, Blesdell, Edwards, Samuel, George, Regis, Francis, Charles and Williams families of Ruquin, Sarah Augustine and family of Harmony Hall, Maureen Dumont and family of Bellevue, the Bishop family of Petite Esperance, Desmond McQuilkin and family, and friends and neighbors of Ruquin and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Stephen Giddens, also known as Victor Modeste of Ruquin St. David, will take place on Tuesday, November 29th at 10 a.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. David Anglican Church, and interment will be at the St. David's Anglican Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Christine Caroline U. Peter Francis, née Horsford, a former employee of Inland Revenue Department Carriacou of Lestier Carriacou, passed away on Thursday, 27th October, at the age of 57. She was the wife of Franklin Francis, also known as Taylorman. She was a mother of Kwame Francis Hamilton, grandmother of Kalina Hamilton, sister of Boris, Julian, and Christine Horsford, and Barbara Pivot, stepmother of Jumali McFarlane and Franco Gabriel, mother-in-law of Clinton Hamilton, aunt of many including Cherise Thomas, Francis and Joseph Julian, Carol and Jamie Pivot, Kenya and Chrissy James, grand aunt of Khalil, sister-in-law of Frankie, Angela, Girlie, and Kevin Francis, and Carl Pivot, niece-in-law of Margaret and Jean Benjamin, and Cecilia Horsford, niece of Anne Roll in the Bahamas, Thomas Sonny Benjamin in England, Roy Benjamin, Leo Horsford, Vernice, Evelyn, Lorna, and Hugh Horsford, caregivers Patricia Bernard and Talia Joseph, close cousins of many including Carl Benjamin, Kitty, Javon Roll, Aline Roll Joseph, Jacqueline and Robert, and Pamela Benjamin, Clement, Saga Thomas, Wendy and Horsford James, Dr. Anne Henry, and Wayne Wilson, close friend of Brenda Prime, teacher Sharon Bishop McLawrence, Suzette George, and Enid Matheson. Other relatives and friends including Francis and Benjamin families, Hosford families of Winter Forest, Belle Plaine and Belle Isle, Grenada, Patricia John and family, Helen Wilson and family, Joseph and Bristol families of Leicester, James family, Gertrude Joseph and family, and Phyllis Marshall and family, neighbors of Leicester and surrounding areas too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Christine Caroline U. Peter Francis, née Hosford, of Leicester, Carriacou, will take place on Wednesday, 30th November at 2 p.m. The funeral service will be held at the St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church, Hillsborough, Carriacou, and the interment will be at the Brunswick Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Joseph George, also known as Daniel Jeremiah of Hope St. Andrew, passed away on Saturday, November 5th, 2022, at the age of 99. He was the father of Lystra, Ezekiel, and Augustine Joseph, grandfather of Cislin, Eslin, Margaret, and Jeremiah, Liston and Isaac Joseph, Nandi and Cindy Gulaba Singh, Micah, Samantha, and Alana, great-grandfather of 25, including Fiona, Denise and Tanisha Jeremiah, and Marlon Joseph, great-great-grandfather of 25, uncle of many including John Braffett, Rebecca Panshu, Flora Braffett, Vernis and Jennifer Jeremiah, father-in-law of Ezra Joseph and Danley Beggs. Many cousins, other relatives and close friends including Anne-Marie Mitchell, Pastor Ashley Church, members of the Grand Bachelet Baptist and Holiness Churches, the Braffett, Mahorn, Jeremiah and Panchu families, the management and staff of M&N Hardware, and friends and neighbors of Hope, Grand Bachelet, Cooma and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Joseph George, also known as Daniel Jeremiah of Hope St. Andrew, will take place on Wednesday, November 30th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grand Bachelet Baptist Church, and interment will be at the family cemetery Hope. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Matthew Francis Harry, also known as Bro and Harry of Winter Forest St. David, who resided at Madagascar St. George, passed away on Friday, 11th November, at the age of 66. Left to mourn are his estranged wife, Sherry Ann Smith, many children including Siobhan Mason, Genesis and Rohan Harry, Caden Nelson in Canada, Marville, Darville, Kendall, and Kendall Noel, Cassandra Greenwich, Maxine and Anson Isaac, Travis Chetram, Vanessa Noel in Trinidad, siblings Reginald Harry in Canada, Derek Harry in Trinidad, Alwyn Harry, Javon Nixon, Brenda Harry Duncan, Patricia Harry Charles, and Janice Harry Smith. Many grandchildren, nieces and nephews, many other relatives and friends and neighbors of Grenville and surrounding areas. A private service for the late Matthew Francis Harry will be held privately on Thursday, 1st December at 1 p.m. at Bailey's Funeral Home Chapel, Carona, St. George. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Alva Max Jr. Renaud, also known as Renaud of Seamoon St. Andrew, a former worker at the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, died on Saturday, November 12, 2022, at the age of 43. He was the father of Jalen Smith, brother of Alison McMyer, Alice Renaud Purcell, All Renaud, Lincoln and Michael Duncan in Grenada, and Denise Coxter Lewis in Canada, uncle of Rhiannon Hall, Cherise Hall, Sir Hannah Hall, Ramon Hall, Isron and Arisa Purcell, Keisha Jack, Aline Renaud, Telly, Marlene, Marcine, Mikey, Desiree, Drew and Derek, nephew of Gloria Batiste, Mona Renaud, Irma Bell, Jocelyn Renaud, Clarence Renaud and Arthur Renaud, brother-in-law of Tyrone Buckmeyer, Frieden Purcell and Derek Lewis, dear friend of Alana Bain, Akeda Vento, and Zakia Collins. Many cousins, other relatives and friends too numerous to mention. Neighbors and friends of Seamoon, the Cocoa, Paradise, Telescope and La Follette, the graduating class of 1995 of the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School, SAS, the employees of the Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, especially the unit where he worked, Youth Biz, and employees of the Grenada Development Bank. The funeral service for the late Alva Max Jr. Renaud, also known as Renaud of Seamoon St. Andrew, will take place on Friday, December 2nd at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grenville Evangelical Church, and interment will be at the Grand Bras Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Anthony Thomas Radix of River Road, St. George, who resided in Ocala, Florida, passed away on Saturday, November 5th, 2022, at the age of 87. He was the husband of Esther Francis Radix, father of Mark, Michelle, and Yola, grandfather of 3, great-grandfather of 4, brother of Dora Radix in the USA, father-in-law of April Radix in Florida, uncle of Valerie Lacrette, Bernadette Mitchell, Richie Lacrette, and Ian Lacrette in the USA. Many cousins, other relatives and friends, including friends and neighbors in Grenada and the USA. The funeral of the late Anthony Thomas Radix of River Road, St. George, who resided in Ocala, Florida, will take place in Ocala, Florida. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Anthony Modeste, also known as K-Foot of Grove St. John, passed away on Thursday, November 17th, 2022, at the age of 69. The funeral arrangements for the late Anthony Modeste, also known as K-Foot of Grove St. John, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Vernal Collins, also known as Teacher Collins and Papa, of Mount Plaisir, who resided at Upper Depardine Street, Grove St. John, and in Miami, Florida, passed away on Saturday, November 12th, 2022, at the age of 83. The funeral arrangements for the late Vernal Collins, also known as Teacher Collins and Papa, of Mount Plaisir, who resided at Upper Depardine Street, Grove St. John, and in Miami, Florida, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Francis Pear, also known as Pops of Tempe St. George, passed away on Wednesday, November 16th, 2022, at the age of 71. The funeral arrangements for the late Francis Pear, also known as Pops of Tempe St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Lyris Louisa Bowen, also known as Tanti Lyris, Sassy, Grandma and Dudu, of Marian St. George, passed away on Friday, November 11th, 2022, at the age of 97. The funeral arrangements for the late Lyris Louisa Bowen, also known as Tanti Lyris, Sassy, Grandma and Dudu, of Marian St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Ashel Alana Mary Lendor of Leicester Carriacou passed away on Sunday, November 6th, 2022, at the age of 25. The funeral arrangements for the late Ashel Alana Mary Lendor of Leicester Carriacou will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Anna Cador, also known as Mama, of Grand Roy St. John, passed away on Sunday, November 20th, 2022, at the age of 91. The funeral arrangements for the late Anna Cador, also known as Mama, of Grand Roy St. John, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Keith David Caliste, also known as Kesor, and Kesor Ball, of Pomerose St. David, passed away on Tuesday, 8th November 2022 in Canada, at the age of 62. The funeral arrangements for the late Keith David Caliste, also known as Kesor and Kesor Ball, of Pomerose St. David, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Francis Mitchell Kim Andel, well known as Kim and Pei, of Victoria St. Mark, passed away on Monday, 21st November 2022. The funeral arrangements for the late Francis Mitchell Kim Andel, well known as Kim and Pei of Victoria St. Mark, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home.
The management and staff of MTV extend deepest condolences to those of you whose loved ones have passed on. Thank you for watching.
Hi, I'm Pastor Jerry. There is a saying that everybody is somebody's special somebody. If that is true, and I believe it is, then whenever somebody dies, somebody special has died. And not only that, but whenever somebody dies, there's always somebody grieving for that person. You'd be amazed to know how many people are in grief when death happens. And what usually happens after the funeral is that most people go back to their lives. Family and friends many go back to the countries they came from. And all of a sudden, the people who are grieving most find themselves in a lonely spot, left alone. This is why I'm here to make a special appeal to all of us to do all that we can to help grieving people. It's called grief recovery. So let's remember that somebody out there is hurting and in pain. And there's a lot you and I can do. Let's do the best we can. Here's some things you can do. Maybe invite them over to lunch or to have a cup of tea or something. Write them a note, or give them a book, or make a phone call. Or how about even going over and spending some time with that person and letting them know that you care about them and talk with them. And especially let them talk about what they want to talk about and listen a lot. And if you do that, then we would be coming together to help people in the recovery process. There are needs out there. There are people who are hurting. Here's what the Bible says. The Bible says, as long as it is called today, let us encourage one another. Somebody grieving needs your love and encouragement. So let's do the best we can. And let's remember that whenever a death happens, somebody's special somebody is gone. So I challenge you to help us. Let's do all we can to help somebody who is grieving today. And may God bless you as you share love and care, kindness, and give attention to those who are grieving today. God richly bless you.
Yeah, Michelle.